What are the Mavericks getting in Frank Ntilikina, and why Darrell Armstrong tells you that Kristaps Porzingis is truly unselfish? This is the gray area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. And you can catch me on your home of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. Per Mark Stein, longtime NBA insider, Frank Ntilikina appears to have his next destination, and it's going to be the Dallas Mavericks. The 23-year-old Frenchman, who did not receive a qualifying offer from the New York Knicks, appears to be headed toward Dallas for his next NBA stop. You might as well start calling the Dallas Mavericks the Dallas Knickerbockers. With Ntilikina's addition, the Dallas Mavericks will now have 5 former New York Knicks, including Trey Burke, Reggie Bullock, Kristaps Porzingis, Ntilikina, and of course, Tim Hardaway Jr. So for the Dallas Mavericks, they are going to be signing a guy who goes 6'3", 6'4", has got a 7'1" wingspan, is a terrific defender who still has some deficiencies on the offensive end. Now, Ntilikina did shoot a promising near 48% from the three-point line last year, albeit on just 48 attempts, going 23 of 48 from the three-point line. So there's still a lot of development in terms of his offensive game that needs to grow. But at the same time, when you're looking at what this team needs to improve on the defensive end, you brought in 3-and-D wings like Sterling Brown and Reggie Bullock. Now you bring in a defensive guard who has a reputation of being one of the better guarding guards in all of the NBA. So you've seen how this Mavericks team is trying to continue to improve on the defensive end. Last year, they took a swing by, of course, acquiring Josh Richardson in exchange for Seth Curry. We know how that worked out. But for Jason Kidd, the new head coach of this basketball team, he has said throughout this offseason that they have to do the little things better. And the Mavericks are going to take a chance once again in terms of their player development. We've seen throughout the years how they've been able to develop players like Dorian Finney-Smith, Jalen Brunson, Maxi Kleber, and others. Jason Kidd, of course, is largely credited for the development of Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee. Now he will have an opportunity to take a flyer on a young man who has got a lot of potential, especially as his offensive game continues to grow. The former number 8 overall pick back in the 2017 NBA draft was a fan favorite by a lot of Mavs fans to potentially be a part of the Mavericks during that said draft. There's pictures, of course, of Mark Cuban hanging out with Frank Ntilikina, and a lot of Mavs fans thought that Ntilikina would be a part of this franchise back in 2017. That, of course, did not happen, where he was drafted by the Knicks. And then with the 9th overall pick, of course, Dennis Smith Jr. was taken by the Dallas Mavericks. Dennis Smith Jr. still trying to find his way in this league. But at the same time, for Ntilikina, an opportunity for a guy that last year posted a career-best 108 defensive rating and a 2.2 defensive box plus-minus last year. So you can see why the Mavericks are going to be taking this flyer on a minimum contract, according to Mark Stein, to bring him in to give them another guard that has an opportunity to try and make this team. Now, I don't see him more than anything than just a rotational player at this point, especially if you're going to have to try and make room for him if you move on from, say, a Trey Burke or from a Moses Brown, depending on how the Mavericks are able to fit Ntilikina into this roster. So roster moves most likely will have to be made, especially if Ntilikina can find himself playing well in camp and getting a roster spot on this team going into this upcoming year, because the Mavericks will need to continue to improve defensively. We know that last year they tried to do so by acquiring some quote-unquote toughness in James Johnson, tried to do so with Josh Richardson in terms of sacrificing some three-point shooting in order to get better defensively, and that really didn't come to fruition. They've doubled down on that this offseason with the additions of Reggie Bullock and Sterling Brown, guys who can guard multiple positions on the wing, especially in a guy in Reggie Bullock, who's not only a career 39-40% three-point shooter, but can guard multiple perimeter positions and do so effectively and not get played off the floor, so that he remains an effective part of the Maverick strategy, both offensively and defensively. You're hoping the same for a guy in Frank Ntilikina. For a guy that's only 23 years old, still has a tremendous amount of upside that shows that he can be one of the better defending guards in all of the NBA. When you play in a Western Conference that features guys like Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, and others, Damian Lillard not to be the least, you've got to have guys that can guard the perimeter and guard the perimeter effectively, and it seems like the Mavericks are doing so by bringing in Frank Ntilikina. I asked folks on Twitter what you thought of the move. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did it not move the needle for you? And for the most part, folks are okay with it. Again, it's a low-risk, high-reward signing that gives Jason Kidd an opportunity to show what kind of development chops that he has and trying to bring those to the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, known for their player development throughout the years, will now have a chance to take a swing at a guy in Frank Ntilikina. Will it work out ultimately? I guess we will see, but at the same time, it is good that the Mavericks at least continue to try to take swings at fences, even though they lost out on the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes. And who knows, that whole Goran Dragic thing may still be out there floating somewhere, although he looks to be settling in with the Toronto Raptors, at least for the moment. I guess we'll see how that flows for the Toronto Raptors and Goran Dragic. But for Frank Ntilikina, an opportunity to resurrect his career, a guy who fell out of the rotation with Tom Thibodeau. You saw how unfortunately he got cooked by Trae Young in the playoffs this year, but at the same time, he's got a chance to resurrect his career and to do so with a team that needs him to be the kind of perimeter defender that he's capable of being and to do so consistently night in and night out if he does, in fact, make this roster. I sat down with Dallas Mavericks assistant coach, longtime assistant coach Darrell Armstrong the other day, and speaking of former New York Knicks, really interesting conversation surrounding Kristaps Porzingis because we know that the Mavericks are going to be led by Luka Doncic, but how Kristaps Porzingis performs this upcoming season is going to be extremely important. Here's an interesting conversation that I had with Darrell Armstrong about how he feels about Kristaps Porzingis and why we may need to consider this when it comes to Kristaps Porzingis in this upcoming season. You know, for you being up close and seeing how hard he works at his game and tries to improve at his game, what are you most excited about for him this upcoming year, whether it be something to quote unquote prove to other people or just building on who he is as a player that maybe we or those who see and watch this team on the outside don't necessarily understand about Porzingis and what kind of work ethic that he is putting in to get himself to where he wants to be and feels like he should be going into this season?
Well, it's just the same thing, just building on, you know, his confidence of, you know, first of all, I know, and he works so hard, and him and the staff, the training staff works so hard for him to stay healthy. You know, that's been a situation for him over the last couple of years, but, you know, he puts in the work. You know, we got to find ways where we make him look successful as well, getting him the ball in places where we know he can score. One thing he can do with him and Luka is they're really good pick and roll players. And if he's not in the pick and roll, he spaces the floor if he's up top. You know, he's going to have to roll sometimes this year. I think he caused a problem when he rolls to the basket because he's 7 foot. That, you know, he can cause a problem if he doesn't have the layup or the dunk. He knows how to pass the basketball out. That's one thing I think a lot of our fans don't understand about Kristaps Porzingis, that he's very unselfish. You know, he plays the game the right way. He's our second superstar. Even I look at Tim Hardaway as one of our superstars. You know, and Luka is our main superstar, and Luka has the ball a lot. So now it's just about, you know, us putting all those things together and how can we make Kristaps Porzingis successful as well as the rest of the guys, the rest of the team, and that's what it's about.
So Darrell Armstrong is saying, look, Kristaps Porzingis is extremely unselfish. We're going to have to potentially find ways to get him rolling to the basket. We know how good he and Doncic are as pick-and-roll players for the Dallas Mavericks, the most efficient pick-and-roll duo in the NBA all of last year. But it's Kristaps Porzingis' unselfishness that may be lost on Mavs fans. And honestly, you started to see some of that at the tail end of the Clippers series. Yes, Kristaps Porzingis was relegated to being a decoy against the Los Angeles Clippers. But what you saw him attempt to do was to move without the basketball, try to be a better passer, and to make things happen for his teammates so that he can still find ways to get involved in the offense. He's going to have to take that same mindset going into this upcoming season, especially knowing how important he is to this team and their offensive and defensive strategy. We know that Porzingis can be an anchor around the rim with his rim protection and shot blocking, but more importantly on the offensive end, stretching the floor from the three-point line. But he's going to have to be a little bit more of a playmaker, especially if guys are going to put smaller guys on him, take advantage of those looks, obviously, by getting open looks and taking advantage of smaller guys when he is being guarded like that in the post. But more importantly, can he find and make plays for his teammates also on the floor? If Kristaps Porzingis can take that mindset, that unselfishness, and translate it to both on and off the floor with what he does as a player and as a person, Kristaps Porzingis is going to be okay. And look, he's got a bunch of former Knicks teammates around him to make him feel comfortable. So at this point for Porzingis, there really isn't any excuse. He's coming into this year healthy. He's got an opportunity to work on his game and work on his game only because he's not having to focus on rehab. And hopefully he has learned from his mindset late in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Clippers late in that first round, which was, although being relegated to being a decoy, he could still have an effect on the game. And that is what's most important about Porzingis and what he should be going into this upcoming year. Can he be as effective as he was during his time in New York and what we've seen at times from him when he's been healthy for the Dallas Mavericks? If so, the Mavericks could find themselves competing for a top 4 spot in the Western Conference. All of that remains to be seen, though, as we get ready for training camp less than 2 weeks away. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. It's been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.